This one time, this guy just like kept messaging me on Tinder, like only ever past 9 p.m. Like, hey, do you want to get boba sometime? We should get boba. 2 days, no response, cold call. Hey, we should get boba. And I kind of figured like this guy just wants to. So I was like, okay, sure. The date was terrible. Like, he started talking about Bitcoin at one point and like how amazing Bitcoin is and how Bitcoin is the future. And I was like, how do I get this man to stop talking about Bitcoin? And then instead of ending the date and walking home, I sucked his in the months and now like years since, I've always felt like a little weird about that date. Was I coerced? Like, why did I do it? And why did I feel so weird about it for so long afterwards? It wasn't really non-consensual, like I wasn't assaulted, like permission was explicitly asked and explicitly granted. I just had a bad time. So since I consented to that uncomfortable experience, my discomfort was my fault, right? In 2016, Sarah Schulman published a book that made some people very uncomfortable called Conflict is Not Abuse. In it, she makes some controversial claims like, sometimes we shouldn't believe victims. We shouldn't expel students who have harmed other students. And no does not always mean no. Before I get cancelled just for saying these words with my mouth, let's talk about them more. So we all know that no means no, but as a counterpoint, we live in a society. Also, we're human. So sometimes we say no when we feel yes. For example, let's say you offer some cake to your mom's friend, but she's like, no, I'm too fat, I'm on a diet, when I didn't fit into my wedding dress anymore, my husband threatened to divorce me. And then she ends up eating the cake anyways, and she says it's the best cake she ever had, and then she even takes home a slice for her terrible husband. In this example, she said no not because she didn't want the cake, but because of social pressures and societal constructions of health and beauty and her loveless marriage. So, like I said, we live in a society, so no does not always mean no. Sometimes I really can't stay means I would like to have sex with you, but the strict social rules of our puritanical context means that you have to instigate the thing, and then we both also have to feel guilty and weird about it afterwards.
Merry Christmas.
And sometimes we say yes to things that we probably should have said no to. Like, sometimes we agree to eat pork intestine at Hot Pot because we figure we can handle it, but it turns out we're too white for that. In other words, consent is ideally freely given and fully informed, but it's usually impossible to actually be fully informed about something, or to feel no social pressures at all when making decisions. Of course, it's up to you to make mistakes and change your mind. And like, other people should respect your yeses and nos. But that doesn't mean you always get it right. When some random person is just asking you again and again to get boba, then maybe you're like, hey, maybe meeting up with this person would actually be really fun and exhilarating. Like, maybe I would really enjoy it. Plus, everyone has to try something like this when they're young, right? Like, sometimes you suck it because of peer pressure. It's actually really tasty.
You suck this peer pressure.
For me, acknowledging this paradox that no does not always mean no and that yes does not always mean yes actually makes some of these weird, contradictory, spiky feelings resolve. I said yes when I maybe should have said no, but that's okay. It's normal for us flawed humans to get it wrong or to change our minds. Look at all these chickens.
Look at all these chickens.
Anyways, chickens aside, getting my consent wrong is nothing to feel guilty about or to lay blame over. All of drama YouTube, half of Twitter, and honestly, half of the entire internet is built on a foundation of discussing and sometimes exaggerating harm, whether that's harm done to you or harm done to other people because it gets clicks. It's exciting, it's interesting, it's shocking, and it's even kind of comforting. Like when issues are phrased in certain ways where it's really easy to just take a side, that's comforting. You can just shun someone without shame, totally secure in the knowledge that, well, that person is just irredeemably terrible, so it's actually good for us all to make fun of them. It's like how in a superhero movie, the villains are absurdly bad people who hurt people for bad reasons so that you can feel great when they get hurt in return. You can enjoy the violence as fun, comforting entertainment. Being a victim can be a powerful position. If you can get other people to believe you that you were hurt, that they hurt you, then you can hurt them back in socially acceptable ways, whether that's killing your murderous pseudo-adoptive 90,000-year-old son, or calling someone names, or spreading rumors about them, or getting all your friends to sign a petition against them, which I guess happens sometimes. Of course, people misuse this power sometimes, like how anti-trans advocates emphasize and mythologize dangerous trans people, or the dangers of people transing the children to justify denying trans people life-saving medical care, or how anti-abortion advocates frame their struggle as pro-life to focus on the harm committed against innocent baby victims, to justify causing the reactive harm of not providing medical care to people who are harmed by staying pregnant. Or to critique the left a little bit as well, there's the characterizing of people as good and bad based on their identities, that all men are terrible, or that all white people are ignorant colonizers. This is a way of accusing someone of being harmful, and therefore potentially even deserving the harm that happens to them because other people like them have caused harm. And yes, cancel culture, or at least a lot of mass internet bullying, is similar. Does someone's offensive 5-year-old tweet justify mass internet bullying? Does someone's unusual canned beans parenting justify mass internet bullying? More on that later. Does someone writing teen fiction justify mass internet bullying? I feel like no. In a conflict, one way to win is to cast your enemies as inhuman, as irredeemable villains, so that the only good thing to do is to bully them, or cancel them, or kill them. As Sarah Schulman emphasizes, the same techniques and logic can justify genocide. Digging up and criticizing old tweets obviously pales in comparison to genocide, but they operate on a similar function, casting someone's iffy behavior, whether it's terrible but old, or recent but merely iffy, or completely made-up propaganda, as proof that they are irredeemably bad. And using that within our own lives strengthens the abilities of more powerful forces to use it for more harmful ends. Someone's state-sanctioned murder can be justified by the fact that they did drugs once. One possible response to my weird bad date might be for me to amplify the discomfort, to escalate it to the level of assault, to feel like totally violated and make it seem like he did a bad, but I was totally innocent and I need revenge. But I think this sidesteps the part that I played in making the situation happen and kind of flattens the nuance of it. But I mean, I do wish I hadn't ended up in that situation. So, what should I do in response to the bad? In an ideal world, what would even happen? Well, maybe in an ideal world, there's something even more radical that Schulman proposes in her book, that potentially even instances of genuine abuse cannot really be resolved with shunning or cutting off or lack of communication or punishment. You might have heard of this idea before as transformative justice. It's one idea of what we could have as an alternative to the police or the prison system. Here's a super informal definition of transformative justice. So our current justice system, punitive justice, means punishing the person who did the bad. But this often doesn't help the person who was done dirty, while also making the person who did the bad experience new extra bad, and not really helping them or other people really understand why the done bad was bad. So the bad thing is probably going to happen again, whether that's just the same person doing it again or other people continuing to do the bad thing. So in response to a bad, net bad is increased. Meanwhile, in transformative justice, when a person does a bad to another person, other people try to help the done dirty person heal, while other people work with the person that did the bad to take accountability for their done bad, and investigating why they did the bad, and then changing their circumstances for the better to prevent future bad. So in response to a bad, net bad is decreased. As a fairly low-stakes example, let's talk about Bean Dad. For those who don't know, Bean Dad is a dad who told a story on Twitter about how his daughter was hungry, and then they planned to have baked beans, but she didn't know how to use a can opener, and then instead of opening it himself or showing her how to do it, he assumed the shape of a sphinx and gave her riddles until she eventually figured it out. Under the current Twitter-based punitive justice system, he was placed in the stocks and mocked by thousands of strangers and repeatedly accused of child abuse. Someone even wrote a dim sum themed script where his daughter gets revenge by killing him. And then he deleted his Twitter and then issued an apology, but now he's back on Twitter and it seems like his life is relatively back to normal, but there was a lot of shunning and punishment all around, so very, very punitive. Under transformative justice, someone would talk to him and his daughter directly and determine what harm was done exactly, and then seek to repair that harm, like address whatever problems that actually exist within their relationship. And then Twitter probably wouldn't have been involved at all, or like maybe people would have had help with all the crappy relationships they had with their own fathers that caused them to relive difficult memories from their own childhoods that were brought up by this tweet. In her book, Shulman brings up how expelling students who have committed sexual assault would simply unleash them onto the world of women who don't go to elite private schools. It would launch an angry, disenfranchised, and stigmatized perpetrator into the world of women who don't have deans and college councils to defend them. So maybe it's more responsible to not expel the student, but to have programs in place that could help them, and other fellow students who might be struggling with similar issues to work through their harmful attitudes towards consent and relationships and sex and so on. Sometimes people can change. And I think we have to believe that other people act for reasons and want to be good. We just make mistakes and believe the wrong things. People are trying their best, so maybe if they're given some new information and new circumstances, their behavior can change, because nobody is irredeemably bad. In fact, I think believing that we or other people are irredeemably bad prevents us from taking accountability for our mistakes. Why even try if you're just bad? But you aren't just bad. You're a good person, and you do what you think is best. But you can and you probably will hurt people because you make mistakes sometimes. So you can and you should learn and grow from those mistakes. As a related side note, it always bugs me when I see people brag about blocking and unfriending anti-vaxxers on Facebook. Unfriend them if you really need to, but is it something to brag about? You didn't defeat the villain, you just increased the echoiness of their echo chamber. If you're actually concerned about the harm they're spreading with their anti-vax views, don't you think it'd be better to have a conversation where you try to understand why they hold these views and gently try to help them understand the harm it causes and also help them feel safer about vaccines, so maybe they'll get some and then we can all go outside without still being afraid that our breath might kill people. So let's go back to my weird bad date. A big part of healing is the uncomfortable parts of taking responsibility and learning and growing and changing contexts and ways of behaving. I think both me and Boba Dude had a lot to learn, and I really hope he's grown as a person since then. I know I have. But I think a lot of this is also about making room for discomfort. The discomfort that life is nuanced and there aren't clear heroes and villains, and that you make mistakes sometimes, and the people who hurt you might have actually been trying their best. And then beyond that, we need to make room for plain old hurt feelings. I think part of the problem is that we lack compassion for many people who are hurting, including ourselves. Sometimes we don't believe people who are actually in pain unless they escalate it to a level that we think is unacceptable enough to actually do something about it. So while we try to figure out transformative justice and helping people learn and grow and take responsibility and so on, let's also make room for discomfort, including and especially our own. Truly acknowledging, hey, a thing happened that made me feel weird and bad, and it's okay for me to feel weird and bad. I feel weird and bad. Let's throw genuine pity parties without shame. If you do it right, it'll make you feel better. I promise. Let's make room for discomfort. Okay, do it. Thank you. Thank you for watching. I'm very cold. Please leave a comment or something. Engagement. Engagement is good. It means other people will see the video. Thank you to Justin. Thanks for watching. Subscribe. Do all the things. Hit the bell. I don't know. Oh my god. It's actually not as cold as you would think. Oh. Ooh, standing up made it worse. Standing up made it way worse.